If I were to start a brand new free-to-play Hearthstone account today, how long would it take me to build a fully fledged standard meta deck? That is the question I will be trying to answer in this video using not only my own personal experience, but also a slightly impressive amount of scientific experimentation. We will be trying to achieve full 100% completion of one of the top 11 most popular standard decks currently in the format, one for each class, according to the most recent Versus Syndicate meta report. There's a number of important bits in that sentence, so let's address them one by one. We are building meta decks first of all, because I believe that having one of these is a likely objective for a competitively minded new player. But more importantly, it provides me with an easy point of reference of when there's no competitive difference between a paying player and an F2P one. And that's exactly what I need for this, a clear cutoff point for when a deck is considered complete. If I allowed certain substitutions, different completion criteria for different decks, after all, some of them are more flexible than others, it would have been much less of an objective project, and I feel like it would have also been a nightmare to code, which we will get into in the simulations part of the video. TLDR, if a non-paying player can get access to the exact same decks as their paying counterpart, game's reasonably F2P friendly. However, if these best decks are entirely out of their reach or behind a grind wall that's not surpassable within a mortal lifetime, games probably pay to win. So, a complete deck. For Standard specifically, first of all because it's the main competitive format, it also has more robust info about the meta, making getting net decks much easier, and probably more worthwhile since we can expect them to actually be good. And thirdly, because I genuinely don't understand Wild. I've run a quick calculation on the 11 decks in question, and the median rarity makeup of a deck in there is 4 legendaries, 2 epics, 7 rares, and 15 commons. Now, these medians are a decent metric for commons and maybe rares, but if we were to look at the individual legendary and epic counts, we can see that there are 4 decks running just 2 legendaries and, 2 decks running 10. So despite what the medians say, having 4 specific legendaries is probably not going to be a prerequisite for completing one of these decks. It might very well be just 2 of them. And to build towards completing one of these decks, we will first need to understand Hearthstone's resource system. The basic resource, the one we have the most control over, is Rewards Track EXP. We get it from completing daily and weekly quests, as well as a small amount from just playing matches. I've seen mentions of 300 to 400 per hour, so I'm using 350 for my calculations, and you also get an even smaller number from completing certain achievements, like this one. These will not be included in my calculations since they are conditional. Hitting certain breakpoints of XP nets us rewards, as seen in this rewards track here. These are generally gold, packs, specific or random single cards, cosmetics, and arena tickets. If you do the math, or look at the math I've copied off the internet that's slowly making its way from one edge of the screen to the other, you will see that the initial levels require very little XP to progress. 100 to a couple hundred maybe. A single daily quest can give you up to 1500 XP. However, as you get into the level 40s and beyond, a daily quest might not even net you a single rewards track level. So that's a very mobile gamey way to structure this. At the very beginning, you will be bombarded with hefty helpings of rewards, but as you go further and further into the battle pass, that stream of rewards may very well dry up a bit. And sure, we could make the argument that those later levels give you more gold per level, because the early ones give you 50, then from level 51 onwards it's 75 gold per level, then it's 100 gold from 75 plus. But you would be correct to assume that this doesn't really make up for the difference in the XP needed to level up. So the immediate next resource that we have the most control over is gold. Gold can be spent in multiples of 100 to buy card packs from a set of your choosing. It can occasionally be spent on other things as well, like currently for the low price of 1200, equivalent to 12 boosters, you can buy one of these StarCraft mini sets, which gives you 30 plus guaranteed cards, including a legendary hero card like Kerrigan over here. Remember these as they will be important later. Each booster pack opened gives us 5 cards, one of which is guaranteed to be rare or better. The likelihood of or better follows the distribution on screen right now. Other cards are assumed to be common by default, though there is a small chance of there being another upgrade. Packs will contain on average 3.5 commons in the long run, so you can expect 1.5 rare or better per pack. And if any of the cards you get from those packs are not to your liking, you can dust them, a slang term for destroying a card in exchange for arcane dust. This is our final currency. This dust can then be used to craft any card you would like, though bear in mind that the exchange rate is 4 cards dusted for 1 card you want to craft of a given rarity. For example, dusting a legendary gives you 400 dust, but to craft a new one, you need 1600. And I could very well go through this process, right? Doing my dailies and weeklies, exchanging them for gold and packs, getting cards and dust out of them, and seeing how long it takes for me to complete a deck here. However, a single trial run on my part wouldn't really tell us much, because I could be very lucky, I could have RNG in my favor, and complete the deck in just a couple of days, or I could be terribly unlucky and go straight to baselessly slandering Blizzard as a result, because that's my go-to. So I say, let's simulate this process. Maybe 500 times. And the distribution of these attempts can allow us to say something a bit more substantial. We will use one of my favorite techniques called a Monte Carlo simulation, which is a fancy term for doing something a lot of times and seeing what happens. So let me tell you about the personal hell I went through when trying to set this up. The plan is to send each of our simulated players on the same journey that I just described myself taking. Maybe I should be calling them mechs, like the Hearthstone minion type? Let me know in the comments if I should be calling them mechs. I will, but also let me know if I should. The main script responsible for that process is essentially a loop. Each iteration, one simulated day in the lifetime of that simulated player. That player will receive resources as if they were completing their daily quests, following the same resource distribution that the game does. If it's the beginning of a new week, they will receive their weeklies as well, which I'm assuming will be completed exactly 2 days after having been received. So if they get a set of weeklies on day 14, they will get the rewards for them on day 16 exactly. Of course, you, a living flesh and bone player, don't have to complete your dailies on the day off or your weeklies in exactly 2 days after they drop. As long as you don't let either quest type overflow, you'll be golden. It muffs out to about the same pace of resource acquisition in the long run. Our mech will also be getting the average XP for playing the game, assuming 2 hours of playtime every day, using the 350 XP per hour average that I found online. Whenever the bot finds itself in possession of enough resources to buy a pack, it will make a purchase, of course. But that presents a problem, which is actually 2 problems in a Trenchcoat. First, it needs to decide which pack to buy. Myself, I just think of what cards I need and then make an arguably imperfect but reasonably quick decision. It's very vibes-based for me. But the bot needs a non-vibes-based process. What's more, the second problem under that Trenchcoat, the process needs to include whether it's worth it to hold off on buying packs for the time being to save currency for a StarCraft mini set. So I wrote a module that calculates the optimal purchase target at each 100 gold interval. It takes all the cards we still need for at least one of our decks from a list, checks the odds of hitting any of them within its set, finding how many hits and how many misses we can expect per each of those sets, weighs that based on whether they contribute to a deck that's close to being completed, those will be weighted more highly, and then returns the expected value of buying each booster pack. It repeats a similar process for the mini sets, bearing in mind that they are more expensive, and provides its final recommendation, either to buy a specific pack, to buy a specific mini set, or to hold off on making purchases until we can afford that mini set. To give an example, let's say that we initially need a lot of cards from Trouble in Paradise. It will start off buying boosters for that set and that set only. But if we get close to completing maybe Protoss Rogue in that process, and that Protoss mini set starts to look very appealing as a result, it will save up for that, even if we still need Trouble in Paradise cards for other decks that are further from completion than Protoss Rogue. It will be accumulating some dust in the process as well. Packs in Hearthstone have pretty robust duplicate protection, so in the first couple dozen boosters of each expansion, you and the bots will mostly only be finding new stuff, but after that you will probably start getting third copies of a couple of commons or something, so these will immediately be dusted, and I have another module for that purpose. And setting up that module was as good a time as any to start thinking of which cards we want the bots to dust. When you're building a new collection, you will need to make the same decision as well. On one hand, you might not want to dust anything. A long-term strategy because you don't know which cards will be playable next expansion, so it's better not to have to recraft them after. However, on the other extreme end of the spectrum, if you dust everything that doesn't go into your deck of choice, you will probably be able to complete it way faster, because you will be able to craft more cards that slot into it. A happy medium I settled on here is to dust cards that don't go into any of our 11 meta decks on the list. This strikes a balance of ensuring we won't have eliminated all possibility of pivoting to a different deck, but also that we will be able to get at least some resources out of the cards that we can reasonably expect to never use. So we will run two parallel sets of simulations. One will only dust the excess copies of cards we get, while the other will follow the logic I just described. Now, having figured out all those bits and pieces, I was faced with one final problem. As a new player, you don't start from scratch. There is a whole new player experience that gives you a multitude of resources. So in order to check which ones and in what quantities, I decided to start a new account myself. Say hello to Brown Raven. Whenever you open a new account, Hearthstone puts you into this prolonged tutorial experience called the Apprentice Track. First, you have this quests section, which walks you through the basic functionalities of the client with quests like play a match, craft a card, open a pack. Some of the other quests in here introduce gameplay concepts as well, like playing cards on curve or taking minion trades, using removal. It also features a separate, shorter battle pass for you to complete, because apparently battle passes are the industry standard right now, and you have to complete that one before you get access to the rewards track for the current expansion. And let me tell you, this one follows the theory that Blizzard front-loads the rewards to, rope players in to a T. Cause it's a very short battle pass, but it gives you loads and loads of value fed to you in big, meaty chunks. Every game you play while working towards completing the Apprentice Track gives you 100 XP, win or lose. 4,500 is required to complete the battle pass, but you will get 925 from the quests, which are trivially easy to complete, by the way. So you need to play 36 games before you're done. And I know, that may sound like a lot. But bear in mind that you are mostly playing against bots, people who are trying to lose faster on purpose to get their XP, and the once in a blue moon actual new player. So I've very rarely seen matches that took more than 10 minutes. I was able to complete the entire rewards track in a single lonely Saturday, but I'd say that playing 2 hours a day, you should be able to do it within like 3 to 4 days maximum. We consider that period to precede day 1 in my calculations, by the way. So if I say a bot completed a deck on day 3, that means day 3 plus however long it would take a player to complete the Apprentice Track. But the rewards you get for that grind are definitely worth it. 5 Emerald Dream Packs from completing the quests, 650 gold, 1600 dust, 13 standard packs, and 5 catch-up packs. 2 in the Battle Pass, and 3 you get in quests immediately after you complete it. Let's pause here for a moment. What the hell are catch-up packs? These contain up to 50 cards from the standard legal expansions that are not the current one. So if you pick these up during Emerald Dream, you should get up to 50 cards from Whizbang's Workshop, The Great Dark Beyond, and Trouble in Paradise. These 50 cards are about evenly spread across these sets and follow a similar rarity distribution to normal boosters. However, as you open your first one, or maybe your second one, you might be pleasantly surprised to see multiple legendaries appear. That's another example of Blizzard front-loading value on you. There's a guaranteed legendary in the first 50 cards you open of each expansion. And since these packs give you 17-ish cards per expansion, it's very likely that your guaranteed legendaries will pop up in them. And boy, do they look nice when they do! Don't you just feel those KPIs rising? So that's catch-up packs. You also get 2 starter decks. These are nowhere close to the meta ones we will be building, so pick whichever one you like from the Apprentice ones and Spellcaster Mage from the other selection, since it's the only one that gives you a currently playable legendary in Puzzle Master Khadgar. The other rewards here include the pièce de résistance, your choice of a loner deck. Now, unlike the starter decks, these ones are the real deal. You'll get to try out 6 of them and pick one to add to your collection permanently. And these are styled after actual meta decks from the recent past, even including multiple legendaries that currently see play. So which one should you pick? Glad you asked. I did a quick analysis to see which loner deck currently available contributes the most cards that are useful somewhere in at least one of our 11 target meta decks. Then I translated those cards into dust values. So let's say a loner deck includes a useful legendary, that's 1600 dust added to its total. By far the best deck on that metric is the warrior one. It gives you 8120 dust value of cards that are useful somewhere in the current meta. The second best candidate only giving 5640. Some highlights of the deck include good neutral legendaries that see play in multiple decks like the Ceaseless Expanse, Kill Jaden and Ziliax, with Jim Raynor and the epic New Heights being part of at least one deck as well. A second candidate I'd potentially consider here is Discover Hunter, since it provides the most value towards a single deck. 4080 dust value of cards that slot straight into Location Warlock, made up primarily of the Ceaseless Expanse again, Grifta, and 2 epic Seaside Giants. So if you want clear direction towards the deck, prefer Grifta over Ziliax, and don't mind losing out on a bit of value in the long term, you can probably pick the Discover Hunter one pretty safely. For my simulations, however, since Warrior is the clear mathematical favorite, all of them will be starting with that choice of deck. So oof, that was a lot. And I have to give it to Blizzard, that new player experience is hella generous. One small caveat though, it involves some weird optimization corner cases that were not only kinda bullshit to account for in my code, but also might very well cause new players to lose out on some value. Let's go rapid fire with this, shall we? Catch-up packs aren't actually guaranteed 50 cards per pack. It scales negatively with your set completion following this Microsoft Excelas graph that I found in the most boring section of Blizzard's website that's probably only there because Switzerland hates loot boxes. If you have more than 25% of cards in one of the 3 sets in the pack, you start getting less cards overall. With the Apprentice Track providing a good number of standard packs, plus enough gold for you to buy 6 more of them, if you open all of these up prior to the catch-up packs, you will ultimately get less cards overall. So you should probably hoard those packs and open the catch-up ones first. On my Brown Raven account, I was somewhat careful with it and still lost out on 3 cards from my last catch-up pack. Point number 2. The loner decks are very much not created equal. And I don't mean in the sense of like some of them are better in the current meta, some of them are near objectively worse than others. Let's just compare these two, shall we? Frost Zerg Death Knight gives you cards worth a total of 4080 dust. Only one legendary here, Kerrigan, Queen of Blades, which is a card you are guaranteed to get from the Zerg StarCraft mini set, again for 1200 gold, alongside 70% of the other cards in this deck, by the way. Compare that to our clear fave Terran Warrior. Sure, you could make the case that Jim Raynor and the other Terran cards in that deck are also available in the mini set, but it includes 6 times the number of legendaries, most of them generically useful neutrals, something that you really want as a new player. And its total dust cost is, get this, 4 times the amount that the DK deck is worth overall. I don't think there is a compelling argument to be made for ever picking the DK Loner deck over some of the others, and I genuinely think that new players shouldn't be presented with that option. Okay, so we know what our simulations will get to start with all the dailies, battle pass, all that jazz. How long will it take them to build a meta deck? This is a histogram of how many days it took each of our 250 simulations that don't dust any playable cards. And immediately, that's a bit of a weird distribution, isn't it? There's a couple big spikes on certain days, surrounded by a couple occurrences of a deck being completed on the days surrounding them. And I think I can explain each of them using either characteristics of Hearthstone's monetization system or the peculiarities of my code. So the first 2 spikes, Day 1 and Day 3, are pretty simple. Day 1 means that the Apprentice Track rewards plus the first couple of levels in the Emerald Dream rewards track were enough to complete a deck. A good RNG scenario. Day 3 is about the same, but with the extra Battle Pass levels you get from completing your first set of weekly quests. Day 14 is a bit more interesting, cause that's when a lot of our simulated players hit a point of both wanting and being able to buy a StarCraft mini set. Day 30 is similar, but on that day that also overlaps with another set of weekly rewards from the week starting on Day 28. And what's also interesting is that 90.4% of our simulated players also bought at least one mini set. So my immediate thoughts upon seeing this are that the most important decision to make in this process is probably if and when to buy a mini set. And since a lot of my mechs only bought that mini set on day 14 or 30 and it resulted in the deck being completed, I wondered if the results would look a bit better if I incentivized buying those mini sets sooner. So I did a secret scientific technique called introducing a constant out of nowhere that made my expected value calculations about 20% more hyped about the mini set. My thinking here was kind of parental. Maybe the bots don't want to buy a mini set even though it's good for them, and if they buy it sooner, they should be able to complete decks sooner. So I rerun the script for another 100 iterations, and yeah, it worked. This is a smaller sample, but the day 30 spike moved to day 24 instead. More importantly, the day 14 spike merged with the day 3 one, suggesting that the previous iterations were spending money on packs willy-nilly, only then realizing that they had to save up for the mini set, and then had to wait until day 14 to do so. Instilling that additional hype in them made them come to that good decision faster. This new strategy is slightly riskier though, since in our OG calculations, almost exactly 50% of our mechs completed a deck within 2 weeks. Whereas in this one, it was much faster, but only 44% were able to do the same thing. So when RNG was at least slightly favorable, buying the mini set early progressed the process much faster, but when it wasn't, there were slight consequences. And looking at the decks that were built, we have an interesting selection here. 71% of the decks were Amphibian Zeg Hunter, 19.11% Jug Menagerie Paladin, 5.41% Protoss Rogue, 2.2 and 1.6% Food Fight Warrior and Pain Zealot Priest, respectively. What these decks have in common is only running 2 or 3 legendaries maximum, and 2 to 4 epics, with the exception of Food Fight Warrior that runs more of them, but a lot of them are from the core set, let's not get into it too much. All of them, apart from Jug Menagerie Paladin, utilize StarCraft mini-set cards heavily, and those, again, guaranteed and easily accessible. Amphibian Zeg Hunter probably ended up being the winner here because its only needed legendaries are Ziliax, which we get from the Loner deck, and Kerrigan, which is part of the Zerg mini set and is guaranteed as a result. So once we have these, it's just a matter of having the needed epics and rares as well. Looking at the other half of our simulated guys, the ones who dust everything that's not useful in at least one of those decks. Oh wow. What happened here? Turns out the initial rewards, the Apprentice Tracks plus the first couple of Emerald Dream Battle Pass levels that you're able to complete on the first day, are virtually guaranteed to allow you to build at least one deck if you mill everything else. To be specific, you should be able to build your choice of whatever deck from the list you like, apart from Blood Control Death Knight and Wish Murmur Shaman. Those are a bit too expensive. Donger Druid and Rayla Imbue Mage require a bit of favorable RNG and might be possible. On my Brown Raven account, I pulled Asina and Malorn organically, meaning out of packs, so I was able to build Imbue Mage by just milling my unneeded legendaries, epics, and a couple of rares, without even needing to touch any commons. So to sum it up, whenever favorable loner deck options are available, and the rewards given to new players in the Apprentice Track, you should be able to build a complete standard meta deck as soon as you get out of that tutorial experience, provided you're okay with milling anything that's not currently seeing play somewhere. If you'd rather build a collection long term and not dust anything unnecessarily, you should probably prioritize sources of guaranteed cards, like the StarCraft mini sets currently. It's hard to say if there will be comparable sources of guaranteed value in the future, which is a definite limitation of me doing this analysis right now. So if you need a general plan, do the Apprentice Track, get the rewards, don't get the DK Loner, see if they point you in a direction, and if that direction involves StarCraft cards, buy the appropriate mini set immediately, and you should be golden. Then do your quests, being mindful that the most bountiful rewards will align with whenever you complete your weeklies, and that the rewards track is quite front-loaded in terms of its value. And, if you follow those steps, I fully believe that you can outperform my algorithms, so I give you maybe a 60% chance of completing a deck within 14 days without having to dust much of anything. I've been Simon from Games Deconstructed, this was the Hearthstone monetization video, thanks for sticking around for the entire thing, and do let me know in the comments what you think about Blizzard's approach to monetization. Is it fair? Is it limiting? Is it a secret third thing? Let me know. You can watch a very similar analysis I did for MTG Arena by clicking the link on screen right now. And otherwise, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.